Okay, let's begin. So today I'm going to talk about the insert from SL screen in Excel statements. And so first, just going to recap what we've done on previous Wednesdays, and we started this the 1st of July. So I covered an awful lot on that one, and I'll probably go over some of those issues in future sessions, just because I crammed so much into that. And so these are the other ones we've had, and all of these recordings are available on our Excel Statements YouTube channel as well. So today I'm going to talk about the insert from SL screen in Excel Statements, and these are just the parts on that screen, and I'm just going to touch on these, but we're going to really hit them in the demo. So these are options that are part of that screen that you can set. So you can set, do you want to see descriptions when you insert an entity? And the descriptions use Excel statements functions. And if you don't want descriptions, there is a choice of none, in which case you're not going to get a description. And then I'll show you what the use names checkbox is about as well. And then the name level. And the only really tricky part about that is the using a worksheet level or worksheet scope is not that easy to do manually, and so we make it easy for you to do it on that screen. And then there's a button for converting FRX links to GL, and I'll try to remember to hit that in the demo as well. So insert as a list is an area that maybe it's a little scary, but I know a lot of people are not using it or don't understand it. And so it defaults to none, which means you can only choose one entity at a time, because you're basically telling it, I mean, the classic is, if you've seen one of my demos, I'm dropping in the company ID I want to work with. If instead I inserted it as a list of a row list, I could drop in several company IDs and maybe the descriptions as well across the tops of columns as a row, and then do like a consolidated report with each of those companies. Or I could choose a couple of ledgers, you know, actual budget forecast, drop those in as a row across the top of my report, and then have those each define a column of the report as well. So you can do columns, you can do lists, and I'll hit this in the demo. And then drop down, that's really big power here. And using a drop down list for sub-accounts is essentially the replacement for what you may have used for reporting trees in FRX or Management Reporter. So the entities available on that, and the first tab is called Entities, is you can drop in companies, and it works a little differently if you have multiple databases. And of course, the Solomon demo data is from multiple databases, so I will show that to you. And then I'm going to show you the effects if you choose more than one company from there. And then there's an Insert Accounts button in the companies area as well. And then ledgers are up there, and then sub-accounts. And then I have seen some sites where they may have segments, but they have no description of any of that in their system. So I'm going to show you where that's coming from Dynamics SL. And then the consolidation tab, and even if you only have one company, some of this can be very useful. And so I'm going to touch on that as well. And then what's on that tab is your consolidation account, well, your account class, your consolidation account, and your consolidation subaccount. And then the consol, when you use those to drop entities into your report, then in your balance function, you have to tell it that you're using one of those. So it's going to use, say, account class rather than accounts to drive your report for, let's say, a summary report or maybe a consolidated report. And then Shift F3 when you're in a cell where you're entering a function, that will give you help on all of the parameters of the function. So it's like using the insert function capability, except you're starting with a cell where you've already entered in as opposed to starting with an empty cell. So yeah, I'm going to go over how the inserting works, particularly if you've selected more than one value from one of those lists. Okay, yeah, and then drop downs by themselves. The first time you create a drop down list, it's going to create a worksheet named structures. And if that worksheet's already out there, it's not going to make another one. It's just going to use the one that's already there. And then I'm going to show you exactly what that structures sheet looks like and what you can do with that. So at version 3, I've said in past weeks that we were waiting for a partner that was writing a testing and demo databases for us to use, and it turns out they sort of gave up on that effort, so we're going to have to do that. And so that's going to cost us a couple days before we can start testing, just trying to create that ourselves. And then in version 3, just for what we're talking about today, some enhancements to the insert from SL. The name level in FRX, which right now is on the entities tab, we move that up so it's not on that tab anymore. And that's partly because you're going to have 3 tabs possible with version 3. There's another tab for project if you have that option. And we didn't want you to have to jump back over the entity tab to change something happening with the naming options. So obviously there's a new project tab if you have that option, and that will have lists for account categories, projects, tasks, and then this is a biggie. There's going to be a 4th list there, and you can choose virtually any list within the project series then to insert into your report as a row, a column, or a drop-down list. And then another biggie that's sort of related is that you're going to be able to do structured reporting on more than just sub-accounts. And we have had a request for that, specifically companies, but we're going to let you go beyond that, and that will work with the project option as well. And then these are some ideas we have for future Wednesday sessions. And if you have something that you would like to see tips and tricks on, please let me know, today, or email me something that you'd like to see. So we're going to go in, and actually, let me exit Excel. Got to move my little. Okay, so I like to start fresh, and I should have had that set up. And I noticed that was on manual. No, it's on automatic. Okay, so insert from SL, and typically I'm using insert from SL when there's nothing here yet because I'm starting the report. So I talked about the description here, and so you do have a choice of none. And you notice right now, when I'm in A1, it's only giving me the choice of below or right to put the description in, because it's seeing that, hey, you can't put anything above row 1, and you can't put anything to the left of column A. So if I move to another one, then you'll see obviously a lot more options for where you can put the description. And when you open this, it defaults to putting them to the right. And then the use names, what this means is, okay, yeah, we're using names. We're going to let it name where we're inserting these. And then, so it's named that company ID. This is the name box in Excel. So if you select a range that's named, it's going to show you the name up here. And use names means with this function, XLstatements function that it's putting in to get you the description, it's using the name of that cell. If I didn't say use names, then that would say $A, $1 there. But we like to use names for several reasons. A major one is that this is self-documenting now. Another nice thing about using names is that they're always absolute, so I don't need $signs or anything like that. So that's what that means. So insert as a list, it defaults to none, which is what I needed to just drop one company in. But like I said, I can go and say, oh, I want to create a column for, and I'm gonna make a row of companies. So each one's going to denote a column for that company, and I'll go in and choose, several companies. And as soon as you choose more than one company, you notice the ledger and subaccount becomes blank and unavailable, because those may differ among companies. And yes, I know that that doesn't happen with different databases, but we deliberately say only if you choose one company are you going to be able to see the lists of ledgers and subaccounts. And if you only have one database, you're not going to see this third column in here. At least I don't think so. And this is showing us which database each of these companies is in. And you can see in the Solomon demo data, we have two companies, SL Demo App 10 and SL Demo App 60. So like I said, I can insert these as a row. I'll say, okay, let's go insert these here. And you notice it's no longer giving me the choice to put my description left or right because I'm inserting these as a row. And so if I said descriptions to the right, that would stomp on what it's putting in the next column over. And so I'll just go ahead and insert those. And so I'm inserting the company IDs with their descriptions under them. And if people inherently understand your company IDs and you may have long company names and you don't want to make your columns this wide, then you would say, no, I don't want descriptions. I just want my company IDs across the top. In this case, some of these are kind of long, and so we'd have to have wide columns. And maybe you've got numbers in the trillions, and so you need wide columns anyway. But and of course, you can type whatever you want in as well. So you don't have to use the function to get the company name. You could just type graphic design in there and Contoso here and Caho over here if you wanted to, as opposed to using those descriptions. So so you saw I chose 3 different companies, and the way when you have this set other than to none, the way you select multiple entities or multiple values is using the control. So you control click on those, and that's standard Windows that you may not have run into before, but that's just how Windows works. And when I have chosen companies in more than one database, as I have, on the console, it's also going to show me which companies that those refer to. Okay, so account classes, consolidation accounts, consolidation subaccounts are actually the same across the whole database. So if I had chosen 2 companies in the same database, then I wouldn't be seeing this column over here as well. It's just because it doesn't make sense. If they're in the same company, then they have the same account classes, they have the same charts of accounts, and they have the same sub-accounts. That's just the way Dynamics SL works. But in this case, because I've chosen companies from 2 different databases, then I'm seeing that information over there as well. And I probably should have spent a little time on this in the slides, but the consolidation information in Dynamics SL that we're using, it's in the GL module. And so in chart of accounts, you have a column, and I was just working with a client where their consultant had hidden these columns. So you may possibly not see these, but they are there, and your consultant can go ahead and re-enable them or make them visible again on your screens if you decide to use these. And I went ahead and for some of these cash accounts, I said, okay, I'm going to say it's a consol account of cash. And this is 10 characters, and it's uppercase letters and numbers that you can put in there. And by default, when you put an account in, it's going to put the same account number over here for consol account. But that's not doing anything important. It's just what they do by default. And so you can put anything, that you can fit into 10 characters over here for consol account. And that's particularly useful if you actually are consolidating companies that are in different databases that have different charts of accounts. Then you can come up with a dummy chart of accounts that's going to reflect the level that you want to see in your consolidated report. So, maybe this subsidiary has 10 cash accounts, another subsidiary in a different database has 5 cash accounts, but all you're really interested in seeing when you consolidate those is what's the total cash, the summary amount. And so you can see we're using many accounts going into the same consol account here. And then you can do the same thing with subaccounts. And subaccounts, because subaccounts can be 24 characters, the consol subaccount can also be 24 characters. And again, these can be uppercase letters or numbers. And so, maybe at the when you're consolidating again across different databases, maybe you just want to see in here, different departments, marketing and maintenance and so forth. And remember, you've got 24 characters in here, so it's obviously better in that way than the consol account in chart of accounts maintenance. So you can do that. And again, this can be many to one. So this one could also be, you could also put this one in maint and so forth. And there is no validation on what, this is a free field. There's no validation on this. And if you are consolidating across databases, you do want to make sure that you get these using exactly the same consol subaccounts in both. And one nice thing here is that other column that we give you here. And so if you've only got it in, one company or another company, this is telling you, oh, that consolidation account doesn't exist in company 60. This one doesn't exist in company 10. And those are the master companies for each database. Each database has a master company associated with it. So we're not showing you all the companies in that database. We're just showing you the master company for that database. And this is all documented in the manuals. And so these are the two that I showed you I just added, and I just added these for company 60. So I would need to go in and add these for the relevant accounts in company 10. And what it's showing me here, these aren't all the accounts going into that consol account. This is just the first one in the chart of accounts that it found. And that's really helpful because if you're going to drop these into your report, instead of accounts, if you want to have your consolidation accounts going down here, you probably want to sort in the chart of accounts order so you don't have to go in Excel and restack all of those. And in any of these lists, if I just double click in what's called the frame, so that's anywhere in here, if I double click in the frame, it's going to resort by the next column that it sees. Okay, so right now it's sorting by the first account, which if you're dropping these in, that's what you would want typically to do, because then they're going to be in the correct order. They're going to be in your chart of accounts order. I'll double click again, and now it's resorted by database. So first 10 and then 60, because 0 sorts before any letters. And the same thing with the consolidation subaccounts. So having this here can be real handy. So if you go and you go fill in all that information for consol account and or consol subaccount, then opening this screen will show you any that are only in one company, which may be fine. But you may see some that, oh, shoot, I want those in both companies. And so you knew you got something wrong with that consolidation subaccount you set up. Oh, I didn't save the ones that I did, those maintenance and marketing. I didn't save that, so that's why we're not seeing those in here. And you got ratio group down here as well. And this is always going to be all companies because this is actually hard coded in Dynamics SL. Are you going to use this? I very much doubt it. Your bank may do what they call spread your financials if you're getting a loan from them. And this is the kind of thing they do is ratio analysis. But I guarantee they're not going to accept that report from you. They're going to do it themselves. So this is for doing ratio analysis reports. And if you want to do those, this can be handy to do that. But you can't create a new ratio group. You're limited to the ones that are hard coded in Dynamics SL. But we threw this in just because we had room for it, and because it took like an extra 5 minutes to also include this, since we were already doing console account and console subaccount. So account classes. So those of you who don't care about consolidation, you can wake up now. Account class can be handy, and frankly, if I am doing consolidation across multiple databases with different charts of accounts, rather than using this, I would use account class instead. One nice thing about it is you've got the description along with it. And where is that coming from? In your GL module, you have account classes that you can maintain. And Dynamics SL does not use these. They're in exactly 0 reports in Dynamics SL. But you can go and set these up. And this will be empty if you've never used them. But you go set up classes and you can put descriptions in. And then in your chart of accounts maintenance screen, you can choose an account class in here. So I hit the F3 key. And so these are the classes that were set up. And then you assign each account to the correct class ID. And like I said, if you're consolidating across companies, I like this better than coming up with that dummy chart of accounts for your parent, partly because they are validated against this table, although they're not validated across databases. You've got to make sure the account classes are set up identically across your different companies in your different databases. But they are validated against that table, plus you've got that description attached to each one that's going to come into XLstatements as a description for that ID. But if you're not using them for that, and again, if you're not even consolidating, if you've only got one company, still you can use these, and these can drive your summary reports, your summary balance sheet, your summary income statement. So you set these up and you use these for your summary report as opposed to using mass lists and ranges for your accounts, for your balance functions. You drop in a column of the classes, the account classes, as opposed to a column for accounts. And I'll show you that right now. And again, that's something where you'd want to resort by the chart of accounts before you drop that in. And so I'm going to drop these in as a column, and I'm going to double click until I see them right now. They're sorted now by chart of accounts order. So this is the first account that's in that class. This is the first account that's in that class, and so forth. And so I'll insert those. What did I do wrong? Oh, not sure. Oh, because I was on expenses. Yeah, that's interesting. Shouldn't have multiple come in like that. But I need to select all of them. And if this was blank, it's going to select all of them as well. So when you first open the screen, this will be blank. But I can select all of them by double clicking. And then I'm going to go ahead and insert. And so I've got include inactive off. And so it's only giving me the active account classes. Let me see. I'm not sure if this works with it. Yeah, it does. So, so now it's including account classes that are set up, but aren't actually assigned to any accounts in this case, in any of the companies that I'm using. And you can see that we've got an Excel statement function, account class description, and that needs the company and then obviously the account class ID here. And so that's where the description is coming from. And by the way, these @signs, this is from Microsoft Enhanced Office 365 a quarter or two ago. And it has to do with putting functions in that can work on a range of cells. And so they are dropping these @signs in sort of as a marker for them to use internally. And so you can delete those if you want. It's just we can't, in recent versions of Office 365, Excel 365, we can't stop it from putting those in. We're not putting those there. Microsoft is putting those there. And it's a marker about whether this function is used across a range of cells or just one cell. And in the case of these functions, it doesn't matter. It's just they're sort of requiring that for internal use. And I kind of wish we could take advantage of some of that, but we can't because we can't tell you to use Excel statements. You have to use the latest version of Excel 365. So we just have to live with the downside and can't use the upside of that. So now I've got my account classes in here, and to use those with a balance function, and maybe I could put my consolidation subaccounts if I had, like I showed you, if I had marketing and maintenance and administration or something, I could drop those in as columns, and then in my consolidated report, yeah, well, typically in a consolidated report like that, multi-company, you're going to have a company across the tops like these, but you can drop those in some way, shape, or form as well, and then refer to those. I'm going to go delete this column. Okay, so obviously these aren't my accounts in my chart of accounts. So if I want to do, let's do PTD Bal. So hit Tab to do the complete. Control Shift A to list out. Oh, I just want to close this. You can't close the screen while you're in the middle of entering something in a cell. And that's true of any screens. Control Shift A. So list out all of my parameters here. And I'm not going to get the company from that's named company ID. I'm going to get it from here. And I want to use absolute row and relative column. And then ledger ID. I didn't drop a cell in for that. I should have. And then account. Yeah, I know this isn't the account, but we're using it to denote the accounts that we want. F4, 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 because I want absolute column, relative row. Subaccount, we'll just use an asterisk for all subaccounts. Fiscal year, we'll put 1999 in because the Solomon demo data is in 1999. And then I'll just put period 11 in. And you notice I have to use quotes around values that are going to be interpreted as what we call a string or text. And where they're interpreted as numbers, I don't have to put the quotes around them. I could put quotes around them. More usually, you're going to drop a ledger ID in here or maybe across here, and you're just going to refer to that cell, in which case you don't have to have quotes around it. Just like I don't need quotes around the 0060 here. But if I were to put that explicitly in here, I would have to have quote 0060 in there. It's just the way Excel works. We can't do anything about that. So there's my balance cell. And so I can copy across like this, and then I'll copy down by double clicking on the fill handle. And I thought we'd have numbers in some of these. What did I do wrong here? Oh, yeah, I have to tell it. It's not finding anything because these aren't accounts. So I have to tell it by using that final optional parameter. So I'm going to do Shift F3 because that brings me into my list of function arguments. And I have to scroll down because it only shows the first 5 or 6. And I can see my last one is called console. And what can I put in there? So if I put an A in, then it's going to use the console account. If I put an S in, it'll use the console subaccount. If I put a B in, it'll use the console account for the account, and it'll use the console sub for the sub account. If I put a C in, then it's going to use my account class as the account. If I put a D in, then it's going to use the account class and console sub for sub account. If I put a G in, it's going to use the ratio group as the account. And if I put an H in, it's going to use a ratio group plus console sub account. Now in this case, I wanted to use my account class as my account. So I'm gonna put a C in there, and I can do that. Well, I have to put the quotes around it. I can do that by entering it in right here. And one nice thing about doing it this way is that it automatically puts the right number of commas in. So you don't have to count out, oh, I'm putting the third optional one in, so I need to skip the first one, comma, comma, the second one, another comma, and then I can put the third one in. If you put it in here, then you're okay. And I think you know about these other optional parameters. And we'll probably have a Wednesday session where I go over all those as well. It won't take much time. Okay, so I changed this now. So I'm going to copy it across again, and then I'll copy it down. And now we're seeing numbers. So now we're seeing, and remember, a lot of these account classes weren't actually being used at all. We just got them because I clicked that include inactive up here. So you might use that if you've got them all set up, but maybe you haven't go and assigned all your accounts to the correct ones yet. You know, maybe you want them all to drop in. And of course, you know, if you say, oh, we're never going to use that, you know, you can go ahead and delete, just like you can delete anything in Excel. And so now what we're seeing in this number, if I drill down, these are all the accounts that have transactions that were in that account class. Okay, and so the account class is really nice, like I said, for summary reports. And the other nice thing about it is you've got this description that goes with it. So just as you would with your chart of accounts in a report going to your board or whatever, you might hide this column. You know, you can certainly hide this column as well, and you've got these nice descriptions out here. And if you want to change the description across all your reports, just go and make that change in your account class in Dynamics SL, and then all your reports where you're using those are going to have that new description. Another nice thing about doing it that way. Okay, any questions on this in particular? And don't forget, you're probably muted, so you may need to unmute first. No? Okay. So, and you notice the ones that you're not using, because there weren't any accounts, it sorted those first because we sorted by the chart of accounts order. And so of the ones in use, you can see that these are in the order you would typically want across your balance sheet and then your P&L here. Okay. And so like I said, you could drop in your console accounts in as well. So maybe you're using account classes for your summary reporting, but you still want to be able to roll up different charts of accounts and doing consolidated reporting. In that case, you can't use account class because you've already taken those for doing your summary reporting. And you know, maybe that summary reporting is what you want at the parent level as well, in which case you're done. But if instead you want, let's say, more detail in your consolidation than you've got set up here, then you can use the console accounts for that. And then again, you'd have to type in these descriptions. And if you want to change one of those and you've got 20 reports, you're going to have to go into all 20 of them and make that change. So I think I wanted to hit particularly on using account class. And again, very handy, even if you're not doing anything with consolidation. Let's see, what else did I want to hit from here? Do you want to see this convert FRX links to GL? Do you want me to demo that? Anybody still in the process of converting FRX reports into Excel statements? Or is everybody glad to be rid of FRX? Oh, and by the way, we have a script that you may not know about. When you get all your FX reports written, if you email me, I'll send you a SQL script that you can run that will remove all the FRX objects from your database. And that will speed up Dynamics SL, particularly things like period end closing, or in particular year-end closing. You'll notice a year-end closing, and particularly if you're using sub-accounts, will go much faster if you remove all that left behind garbage that FRX has put into your database. Okay, so any questions about what I've showed you today, or anything else you'd like to see, or anything that I left out? Okay, any questions about anything to do with Excel statements? And this is tips and tricks / Q&A, and the Q&A does not necessarily refer to the tips and tricks. This is Q&A on any issues or knowledge that you want to know about Excel statements as well. In other words, you've got me here, and you can ask anything you want about Excel statements or Excel. Oh, I know I was going to show you. I was going to show you where if we go and we choose a company and we choose segs here, and I've seen sites where, they've got multiple segs, but they're not seeing useful information here. And if they go and insert, maybe they're not seeing this information either. They're not seeing, 100 for my company segment means controller, 110 means MIS. And so if you're not seeing those when you're using this as, as like I said, as your reporting tree, those get set up here under shared information, and then the flex key definition for subaccount. This is where those segment descriptions come from. So if you're not seeing something useful, you can go in here and change those. So that's where that's coming from. And then the description for each ID is coming from here. So you set up a table for subaccount and then for segment. And so it's saying, my first segment, these are the IDs I'm using in my first segment, and this is a description for each one of those IDs. Okay, so this is where those are coming from. And this isn't really Excel statements, but in the definition here, if you check this for a segment, then if someone is creating a new subaccount, it's only going to let them choose one of the IDs that you've set up in the flex key table. And that can be a really good thing. I've seen a lot of sites where they didn't have this on, and people have gone and set up a new subaccount, and they've put an ID in that they made up out of nothing, or maybe they thought it was a correct ID, and it wasn't an ID that was meant to be used. And so in that case, someone's had to go in and make that subaccount inactive and go and adjust out any transactions that went to it and adjust those into the correct subaccount and so forth. So I usually do turn this on when I'm working with a client where I'm their actual Dynamics SL consultant as opposed to, Mr. Excel statements. but just be aware. And obviously, if you don't turn this on and you don't, if you create a new subaccount with an ID that's not in that list, it's not going to be able to get a description for that ID. And those, of course, are in your drop-downs as well. So if I do a drop-down list for subaccount, let's say we'll do it right here, and I'll say all combinations of reporting unit and location, and I'm going to insert that as a drop-down list, then this little description here is coming from there as well. So we're seeing the description for each of those IDs as it's been set up. And that's coming again from what it dropped into our structures table here. And so ID of location, ID 00 is default location. ID 00 in the first segment, in the reporting unit segment, is default, same. So manufacturing is 01 in the first segment, and Italy in the second segment is IT. And so in your dropdowns, obviously, it can be much more helpful, particularly for people who don't sit in Dynamics SL all day and have all these memorized, for them to see administration Italy, as opposed to trying to understand what 01 IT means if they're pulling that down in the dropdown list. So, and of course, in here, you can go ahead and edit these. You can, put two together in a list. You can change the mass being over here. It's just like editing your reporting tree in MR or FRX. And over here, this is where the list is coming from. This is a really fun Excel formula here. And what that's doing essentially is it's making sure that all of these are in a contiguous range. So if we filter off some of these, saying, oh, we don't want these in our drop-down list, then this list will no longer look like it goes with what you're seeing on the left, depending on what rows you've filtered off here. And you'll see, it might not be the same length, but it is. And then, again, that's where this list comes from. And making a change like that, then those three items that I filtered off, that I unchecked, are no longer in my dropdown here. So any questions about that? Okay, any questions at all? Is anybody out there? Okay. All right. Last chance. All right. Thanks for being here today, and I will see you next week.